So welcome to this session. I am Angela Lindsay. I'm the head of the Schreier Institute for Teaching Excellence, which is not the Honors College. We work with faculty to improve teaching and learning. I was asked to facilitate this session because I'm on the Penn State Online Coordinating Council, which now has responsibility for evaluating MOOC proposals. And I will be monitoring folks with the time allowed, and want to give you a sense of what's going to happen. First, we have two MOOCs that we're going to talk about, so we have to divide the time. And they're each going to shoot for about 10 to 12 minutes to talk about their MOOC. They are not going to talk about the whole process. Each of these groups has selected a portion of the process to discuss. You will have 10 to 15 minutes at the end to ask questions. It's better to hold your questions so that the second group gets equal time. I would recommend just jotting a note to remind you. I would never remember. So each team will have about 10 to 15 minutes for presentation. First will be the Epidemics team, and they're going to discuss the complexities of multiple faculty coordination. Always a challenge. Use of high quality video, and whether the discussion forums did result in student engagement. The creativity team is going to talk about how they turned what was a creativity class that was delivered into a creativity community. And they did this by focusing on simplifying, clarifying, and focusing the information provided to instigate and provoke. And we have a really unique team in the creativity session. We have, and I'm going to come back to you, I'm going to go backwards. So Darell Velegol is Distinguished Professor of Chemical Engineering, and he crossed some pretty amazing disciplinary boundaries and has worked with professional at building community, Professor of Theater Susan Russell, who was recently named Penn State's laureate for 2014-15. So then, thank you. Pretty cool, huh? And then you're going to hear first now from Matthew Ferrari. He's an assistant professor of biology, and his graduate student, yes? Yep. Okay. In ecology, a cross-college program. And they were joined by Andrew Reed in this proposal and the MOOC, but Andrew can't be here today. So what I'm going to do is let them talk, and then we'll allow you to ask questions, and if we run out of questions, we'll prompt you. Welcome. You're on.
Great.
I'm going to turn the lights down so you can see the slides better.
Okay, so that was a wonderfully detailed introduction, and I'm going to do everything I can to depart from it. I'm also not that big on formality, so interrupt me and do all those things if you like to. I got dragged into this MOOC. I was not the driving force on this. I was just someone that got involved with it after it got started. Marcel Salate, who's an assistant professor in biology, was the one that brought this to us and said, basically, here's a train that's leaving the station. We can either get on it or we can let it pass us. And he dragged a bunch of us along, and we got 8 faculty within the Center for Infectious Disease Dynamics, which is a collective unit. It's a non-departmental unit. We crossed several colleges. And he said, let's just put together the collective content that we think would be really fun, that we think the world needs to know to put our science out there. And so we came up with a really simple framework. We focus this on basically 100 level, very base level content, and framed it around simple 6 to 8 minute live action and animated videos. And I'm not going to make you watch an entire video, but you know, we put a lot of focus and energy into generating these videos, into high quality production, and to integrating talking head lectures, which may or may not show up. They usually don't spin like that, right? with custom done animation to illustrate content, to sort of keep the viewers moving along with that. So this actually isn't going to load, so that's fine.
It will load,
it will load eventually, but there's no point in us sitting around here waiting for it forever, right? This was multiple instructors. We had each faculty member presented between 6 and 8 lectures through the course of an 8-week program. So we each, give or take, had about a week of content, but we interspersed our involvement throughout the whole course. We also had 8 graduate students that were involved in monitoring and running the course while it was happening, and then we'll talk about that a little bit, as well as upwards of 25 support staff, a lot of help from TLT, both in development and production and management and oversight. Megan was instrumental in keeping us through this. And then while the course was running, we tried to integrate a lot of direct interaction, both through online forums, which I'll talk about in a minute, as well as through weekly video responses where we asked the online learners to give us questions, and then we collectively sat around in a group, literally in a semicircle, and turned a video camera on and just filmed us answering those questions extemporaneously, making jokes, just coming, whatever came up. And that gave us a way to talk back to the students in the way that you would normally get in an in-class environment, but it allowed us to engage and respond to the students. We also used a phone-based epidemic game where we had, this was formally independent of the course, but it was a web-based app that you could put on your phone and you could play as you moved around. And what this gave students a way to engage continuously with the course in sort of a fun way, but also allowed us to harvest data about who was viewing the course, where the activity was, and put those back out as maps, the kinds of things that those of you that were here before and saw Anthony's presentation, we're actually able to put some visualizations of those out there and let the students see where else in the world the other participants were. And that was a really helpful and sort of exciting way to engage students. And so MOOCs are all about numbers. All the presentations about MOOCs are about numbers. So, right, well, we had 35,000 students that ever registered for this thing. That whittled itself down to about 28,000 students still registered on day 1. Right, 18,000 students ever interacted with the course at any point, watched any video at all. 12,000 watched the first video. Right, we had students continually registering through the time frame of this. Right, that moved down to about 5,500 who actually completed the course, completed all the course requirements, the discussions and the quizzes and all that. Right, and about 2,900 who watched the last video. So we go from this huge number down to a relatively small number, and that's where a lot of the focus has been. It's been on attrition. It's about thinking about these courses as classic courses and how many students do we drag through. And from my perspective, we're thinking about MOOCs the wrong way if we focus on these kinds of numbers. These things are really about engagement and about a way to reach out to a broader community. So we actually had 4,200 people actively participating in the discussion forum, so well more than were watching the last videos. We had 750 people on average watch the extra videos, the extra things that we put up there that had nothing to do with the formality of the course. They were just us talking about science, right? We were blown away that many people actually wanted to sit there and watch this stuff for 10 minutes, right? We also we had 312 people went to an external website and wrote reviews of the course, sometimes very long and lengthy reviews. We're currently the second most rated MOOC on this course. This course has hundreds of MOOCs and online courses rated. We have the second highest response rate, right? Which, from my perspective, that's the more impressive number than the 4.8 out of 5 stars that we averaged out of 312, right? There are other courses on there that have 4.8, 4.95 stars, but they only have 3 people that responded and voted them up, right? So that level of engagement, I think, is the most exciting part, and that's the real goal. So again, right, thinking about the numbers of MOOCs, most people think about this. How many people started? How many people did you end up with? How did they interact with the content? And what was the content they were most excited about? But that's, again, thinking about MOOCs from the standpoint of a classic course, right? I tend to think about these MOOCs, the potential of these, more as a form of outreach. And this is the far more impressive figure for me. This is the estimated student completion rates that we got from our demographic surveys around the world. Right? We had an extraordinary reach around the globe. This is the colors are on a log scale, by the way, just for, right? So, we had 5 to tens of students in sub-Saharan African countries completing the course. That's completion. That's not individuals that ever watched any one video, right? So those are small individual numbers, but that's far greater outreach than most individual faculty or most departments or programs can ever get to, right? So that's where I see the real power of this. And I would think that, right, any department, institute, or college across campus could use this as a platform for getting their science out there and for putting the kinds of work that we do at Penn State out there. So we had 158 countries involved. 1,600 people completed the course that were involved in healthcare-related fields, 700 that were involved in science-related fields. And when I see numbers like that, I think that, in fact, not only is this outreach, the MOOC is a resource. We're actually creating an environment and creating a community of people that are interested in the topics that we're putting out there. And that's a resource that we can bring back to campus and harvest and utilize that. Again, there's a lot of talk, a lot of discussion about using MOOCs to flip the classroom, to take that content and basically provide ourselves some respite from having to do a lecture. Well, that's great and all, but that's not very innovative. It's not a very thoughtful way to do this. In fact, what we're doing is we're generating a community that we can use the energy surrounding that to try and engage students on campus. And so one of the things that we're looking into doing right now and proposing is to actually creating a full-on linked learning experience between an on-campus course and the MOOC itself, right? Where we have the MOOC running through time, so that if we have the MOOC running here, right? And we can link that with two types of instruction, both on-campus instruction and student projects that are being run on campus. And so what we can do is using past experience from the MOOCs, using the online forum content, using the questions that have been posed by these thousands of students from across the world in the past, right, to generate questions and generate interest, and use that to generate topics for research projects and discussing presentation skills. How do you talk to a broad audience? How do you deal with cross-cultural issues? How do you present information to a lay audience, right? And then we can actually, and then while the MOOC is running, we can also have class participation within the MOOCs and actually have students on campus acting as moderators and now educated experts that can put information back out to the MOOC, that can answer questions online, that can do research responses, right? And we can guide those programs, right? We can also use the MOOC to develop questions for student projects, so we're not assigning students questions, we're actually having the global community come up with interesting questions and having student projects respond to those, right? We can then do both either individual research work or group development and group projects, which we can then return back to the MOOC community and put them back out there, and actually, in principle, have the MOOC community evaluate those responses and say, this stuff was really good, both in its scientific content and in its presentation style. So it actually gives us a way to have on-campus students generating real content evaluated by a real community, not just by a university professor. So, keep doing that wrong. Right, so really, right, the classic way to look at this has been to think about how we can take MOOC content and translate that into campus content, right? Which I think that arrow is supposed to be the other direction. But really what we're hoping to do is to take this experience, right, and actually create a two-way street where we're having students on campus and students in the MOOCs interacting and generating a new learning environment as a consequence of this huge online community. And I don't know how it's going to work with the scaling of these screens, but in the discussion portion of this, I thought it would be interesting to talk about how the forum content worked and the level of engagement that we got. We got thousands and thousands of forum posts from students all around the world, right? Frankly, asking us some really engaging and exciting questions that I don't get from my students in class, right? Questions that my 19-year-olds at 2:30 in the afternoon, when they're tired and thinking about what bar they're going to go to that night, aren't generating these exciting questions, right? But here, when we've got a highly educated and diverse community, right, of folks with broad world experience, right, they're asking a lot of interesting and exciting questions, and they're responding to each other. They're responding to those questions. They're answering each other's questions. So the energy generated through that discussion is something I think that we can harvest and bring into the classroom and make use of. And so Spencer was a grad student who was one of 8 that we had monitoring these forums and responding. We had our faculty themselves were answering questions, and Anthony, for those of you guys who were here for the last hour, Anthony said he responded about 10,000 times or 1,000 times. It was a lot. I didn't quite pull that off. I was a couple hundred, right? But we distributed that among eight faculty, each responding tens to hundreds of times, and then graduate students that were also responding many, many times, right? And constantly engaging with students, but also stimulating the discussion. We're bringing in primary scientific literature to response, right? So, and really dealing with exciting and challenging questions. And there were 2 of these that I was really impressed with, right? We talked about controversial topics. We talked about vaccination, right? These are just some of the lists of questions and discussion threads that people came up talking about vaccination, right? Are vaccinations sometimes harmful, right? Do we need vaccinations for animals? How is eradication achieved, right? How do you recover? What about the timing? These are not the kinds of questions that you see on, in response to news articles or CNN posts, right? These aren't the kinds of nut job responses that you expect to see on the internet about vaccination. These are actually very interesting and reasoned questions coming from all over the world. This is one of the Nigerian students, right? These are some of the students. This is a student from Greece. These are students from the Middle East, right? People from all around the world raising these questions and asking these questions. These are the kinds of perspectives that you get from the sheer numbers of MOOCs that we otherwise miss out on in these small classes. So I think that the potential for these MOOCs to act as a real powerful resource that we can bring into the classroom is the sort of new and exciting thing that we should be thinking about doing with these courses.
Great, thank you. And we will, again, have questions for folks. I hope you were writing madly while he was talking. And I want to introduce Darell and Susan next. Not gonna do any good.
Okay, well, while they're working on trying to get our slides up, in February of 2013, our MOOC was selected as one of the 5 from Penn State, one of the first 5 from Penn State. And as a MOOC, a massive open online course, we expected naturally a large course. We were a bit surprised to have 120,000 students in the course from over 190 countries. So it was a bit larger than what we had originally anticipated. And today, we could talk about the content of the course. We're not going to do that. We could talk about the successes of the course, the new businesses that resulted, family relationships that were changed, or artistic contributions. We're not going to do that. We could talk about the challenges of the course, and that's not going to be our focus either. What we really want to focus on today is how we turned a fairly large classroom into a community. And to do that, in part, we spent a lot of time developing carefully crafted videos. And that's what I want to open the talk with. And we'll see if it actually turns out, or if we have to flip the computer to show it on a small screen.
Make you all move up.
I think you're live.
Well, it's clearly reading that it's a Windows machine,
think you're out.
It was on there when I was in here earlier.
It was on there.
Yeah, you guys had it up there. Where is it?
It's on here.
Yeah, it is.
So actually, while we're waiting for this to be, Matt, why don't you stand up, and if anybody has questions for Matt, we'll get to his Q&A now. Oh, we got a desktop at least? Okay. Stand
Go to
up,
this,
sit
go to
down,
the
stand up,
USB,
sit
the
down.
Patriot right there, just click on it. MOOC TLT.
I'm curious about the
And
incorporation of this data
the first
in
TLT, that one.
with the 8 and gone through that in upper class
Good.
today. And
And you
This
can hit,
was up when I came in.
I know,
thing.
who
So
knows?
you said 8 different faculty. Did they all do their own animation, or how did you get support with that?
So,
Thank you.
I mean, Megan's the one who answered the question on production. So we had external animators, and then the
Is there any
workflow was
sound?
faculty wrote scripts,
Yes.
storyboard those scripts with an animator, and then went through the iteration process with the animator, and then so
That
recorded
was
video.
the talking heads and the animation.
Yeah, exactly.
So in terms of video, I guess it's like a green screen.
Yeah, basically, exactly right. Yeah, and it was great. It was really effective. It looks really nice. It's then a finished product, but there's some problems with that. It's not that adaptable from year to year, and it's expensive all the time. So
Have you gone on any other slides?
Shall I give it a shot?
Ready?
Yeah.
Let's see what happens. Oops. Oh, it's already started.
If you're trying to advance, just hit space or.
It's not playing sound.
Another question for Matt?
I don't know.
Any other questions?
I'll try a question. I thought it was a terrific move. That is,
You took
how
it,
did
right?
you get 8 faculty to actually line up like that and do it so smoothly?
yeah, I was.
Yes, on this journey into creativity, innovation, and change. I'm Darell Velegol, one of the 3. Why don't you go back to the beginning? We'll just start it from there. Welcome. Thank you for joining us on this journey into creativity, innovation, and change. I'm Darell Velegol, one of the 3 co-instructors for this MOOC, here with Catherine Novikov and Jack Matson. To me, this MOOC is about starting with what you want to do and then making a change in yourself, your family, your work, or your community.
To me, this course is about discovering your unique creative identity and then putting that creativity to work for you.
To me, it's about utilizing your creative potential to change your world.
Right. Now, at the heart of this MOOC are 3 core pillars. A big part of my role in this course in helping you to go from vision to change will be working with an acronym CENTER, C-E-N-T-E-R.
And to help you find your unique creative identity, I'll be talking about creative diversity.
To help you experiment with your creativity, I will be discussing intelligent fast failure.
Those are the 3 pillars. Now, what are you going to do? Well, you'll be watching videos and reading scripts. You'll be doing exercises, a personal project, and discussion forums. All of these have been designed to help you utilize your creativity in practical ways.
To invest, to enjoy, to profit from your creativity.
So come along, join us on this journey into creativity, innovation, and change. Let's get started right away. We look forward to seeing you next time. That's a typical video. That was actually the opening video from the entire MOOC. And this was the team. A big part of what happened in this MOOC, and the Epidemics MOOC did the same thing. You had a large team working together to produce this MOOC. We had, in this case, you met the 3 faculty, myself in the red, Jack in the blue, and Catherine in the green. We had IT staff, Trey on the left and Dan on the right. We had Kate Miffett, who helped us with the syllabus. And now I want to introduce another key person in this MOOC. And I wrote down a quote this morning from Daniel Pink's talk. He said this. Daniel Pink said, "Artists give people things that they didn't know they need." And boy, we got something we didn't know we needed. And it was Susan.
Oh,
So
thank you. Yes.
I'll introduce Susan.
Thank you, Darrell. Mike, I am grinning from ear to ear because Matt used the one phrase that I got to grapple with my dear engineering friends who have rocked my world so completely from top to bottom, talking head. It was my job, it was my task to work with engineers and not turn them into actors, but to take an information-based MOOC and turn it into a communication-based event. We did have one acting course, but what I talked about was a visual representation, a kind of way to take the information you want people to know and offer them a way to both visually and through the voice and through the body, a way to communicate that information. I approached everything as a theater event. I approached everything as a human being talking to someone. And what it proved in an ongoing effort, because we continue this experiment now, is a natural collaboration between the arts and engineering and science and technology and math. How can I, as a professional communicator, help someone communicate ideas visually across the planet? I kept approaching everything as a play. As a professional playwright, I have to simplify ideas. I have to clarify how those ideas can be shown and told, and I have to focus on each idea as it comes along. Sometimes it just comes down to these great moments when I would walk up to Darrell as he was sitting there and saying, "Darrell, smile. You have to look happy that people have come to your MOOC. Because if you don't look happy, they're not going to receive the information in a welcoming way." Understanding that to move into a sense of communication with the MOOC is to reach out to the people you are talking to in visual cues that they understand. Believe me, you understand me when I do this. Believe me, you understand me when I do this. And you understand me when I do this. Everything that we did was about how the body was in space. As an actor, it was about how you deliver information in a vocal way that engages your students. What I'm doing right now, though it seems spontaneous, is absolutely planned.
And that was
Oh, wait, that wasn't for you. Notice the pause. I love it. We are so close now. It's incredible when you get in someone's face and go, "Darrell, what is the core? What are you trying to say? Because I don't understand the words coming out of your mouth."
Amen.
Amen. And I have to tell you, this picture happened on a day when no one believed we could accomplish what we accomplished. We filmed 6 3-minute videos in 2 hours. 6. Extraordinary. And they all were extraordinarily communicative. We were giving ideas that had an open space for engagement. And it started with how we looked. Now, go ahead.
And I think part of what you said is very powerful, that we didn't lose the content. We didn't lose the content, and instead we focused the content. We started with thinking in terms of normal 50-minute lectures, and soon enough we were producing 3-minute videos, 2-minute videos, 4-minute videos that gave the key point, the core that you're talking about. And numerous times as we finished the videos and finished the extensive scripting and practicing process, Susan would ask at the end, "Did you get across the material that you wanted to get across? Is the content in that video?" And we would look through it and we would say, yes, the core content is in that video. So it wasn't simply that we got rid of all the essential content so that we could keep it short, so that we could keep it interesting. Instead, we brought that down to a focus so that the most important piece got across and they could ignore the rest for the moment.
Absolutely. And this sensibility of everything to me begins with a story. Every mathematical equation begins with a story. Every theory begins with a story of you trying to figure out something. So to approach this MOOC through a storytelling frame allowed us to do things that perhaps the information dispensers did not believe could be a part of what they were doing. And that is to just talk amongst each other, but to be very focused on what you were saying. We felt it was important to have an Act 1, that this is what the MOOC is about, thus that first video. Act 2, how what the MOOC is talking about is playing out in your life. Act 3, how you can take what the MOOC is teaching you and use it for your own purposes, a personal engagement with the information. And that's why the first videos are, to me, this MOOC is this story. To you, it can be something different entirely.
Some of the key pieces that we included in every video, she gave us a simple formula so that we could produce these in a reasonable amount of time. The object was to instigate and provoke on every video, and within it she had a 4-part formula that she wanted us to follow, which we did for the most part. Start with a 30-second story. Hit them with that right off the bat to draw them in. Hit the problem. What is the core one problem that you're trying to convey in this video? What is the solution to that problem? And then how can you have action on that problem as soon as you finish this video? Those were the 4 parts that we tried to convey in every video. So the content of the course was developed by, what if we have a pointer? The person in the upper right, Kate Miffett, another part of our team, she helped us to streamline this into these pieces, to these weeks. And I'm not going to review the entire syllabus, but just to say that we had these pieces of content. This was the framework for which each of these videos came in, and we had to tell a story, a problem, a solution, and an action for each of these pieces to engage the 120,000 people all over the world into a single community. And as you mentioned, you have thousands of discussion forums. Isn't that wonderful? See so much passion about this material all over the world.
And literally what you're seeing there, and I want you to know this is not mysterious. In reception theory, as an actor, I understand that audiences can hold on to 3 primary ideas in a play. 3 ideas that an actor is carrying forward. We worked with this formula of 3, 5, and 8. How you can present your primary focused ideas in 3 ways so that people can actually latch on to what you're doing. And that's what I do. I understand reception theory of people. We hold on to things in 3s. If I want you to know something, I will repeat it 3 times. If I want you to experiment with an idea in how I am delivering information, I want you to have 3 opportunities to do so. This is basic theater understanding of how audiences react and how audiences retain. We can shock you if we say it once. You figure it out the second time we're saying it, and on the 3rd time it is embedded in you.
I just want to play one last video that we worked with someone else you might know from Penn State on. We helped script this video, and Susan guided the process on that day we were there. And this is the close of what we have to say. We can answer questions after this. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Rodney Erickson, the president of Penn State University. My academic career began in a 2-room schoolhouse in rural Wisconsin. There were 6 students in my grade. Today, I'm speaking to a global schoolroom with 130,000 students from more than 150 nations. Talk about creativity, innovation, and change. In this course, you have come together to pursue a common goal. Although as individuals you are different in hundreds of ways, large and small, all of you have creativity in common. This course challenges you to use your creativity in personal and global ways. You have the opportunity to increase our human potential by increasing our ideas about who we can be. Thank you for your energy and participation in this class. I'm delighted that you have joined Professors Matson, Yablokov, Velegol, and Russell in an uncommon experience about what brings all of us together. Penn State's mission for more than 155 years has been to educate students and transform lives. You are helping to make that possible. Keep thinking, keep learning, and keep sharing your creativity with the world.
Got it.
All right.
Thank you.
We need to open this up for some questions. You've been patient with our technological challenges. So I want to get back to Jack's question for Matt, and then we'll take additional questions.
Jack's question was how do we get 8 faculty members to contribute and to actually? Oh,
Yeah.
Got it. All right. So yeah, how did we? This is on. I can never hear it. How do we get 8 faculty members to stay engaged with this? It was really, really hard, and without Megan, we wouldn't have done it. However, learning from that experience, though, I think that there are ways that we can engage people, and I think that the motivation for how and why to do courses like this is really important. And again, we started out thinking about this from the standpoint of a regular class, and we changed our perspective as the course went on to thinking about it as a form of outreach, and as a way, and potentially as a way of engaging with the community, and perhaps even doing research, right? The idea of testing ideas, putting ideas out there. We're doing active research on ongoing processes that are going on. Those of us that work in public health are really interested in how people perceive information, how they'll respond to that information. And once we were able to see the community of learners that was out there as a test bed to put ideas out there, to get our research out there and see what the value added to us was, then all of our faculty got much more engaged and much more interested. So I think really showing, taking that experience and bringing that to faculty that are developing new courses and making them aware of what they can really get out of a course is a big motivator. And I think that that'll be really helpful for new courses that are developed.
How would you connect that with Daniel Pink's lecture this morning?
I thought about that as I was saying it, right? The idea of right, focusing on the why, not the how to do this, right? I think absolutely. I think that thinking about why you're doing this, and again, changing the perspective from just making a bunch of lectures to doing real outreach, I think was a really powerful motivator for us. I mean, I have other faculty within our unit that are excited about being involved in new videos because they can they can list this as outreach on their grants, right? When they report to program officers, this is what the research that you're funding is being now distributed to a huge global audience, right? In ways that we can't quantify otherwise.
Any other questions? Matt?
And this goes to both teams. So I just want to know, how you came into the MOOC versus where you are now. So you have all these vast experiences. So if you had advice for someone how to, as a faculty member coming into a MOOC project now, how would you say this is what you need to think about? This is what you need to prepare. Because now you're seasoned veterans of going through this, and you're learning things even today. But it's such a different picture than it was, 8 or 9 months ago for you individually. Share what you tell someone else is going to go into MOOC development.
Well, I would see, previously I would have seen a course as a certain quantity of content to convey. Now I see a course as a set of experiences that will engage the students. And unless you capture their attention and their passion in that course, it's not going to happen. So you have still a set of content. And in those dialogues, all of those were carefully crafted to feed in the content that we wanted to convey. But it was all conversational, and if we didn't engage the experiences with a broad team of people who could help us in a variety of areas, I don't think it would have worked.
And I would just say that everybody has a skill set, and the skill sets of scheduling, the skill sets of knowing how to manage a project, and the skill sets of knowing how to communicate effectively. These are all very special sets that can be utilized and come together. So if you're entering into a new project, understand that you have information. Other people have skill sets that can be utilized to get that information out.
Yeah,
I'm struck with how what you guys both are talking about is good teaching. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, so absolutely. And I've taken this experience into my classroom, and I've learned about preparing lectures a little bit more and thinking a little bit more about engagement, because I think I was never trained in education. I was trained in science, and I went out and lectured on it. And my focus was on content. I put together the set of content that I'm supposed to be distributing. And what you can do in a live classroom is you can react to students are falling asleep. You got to wake them up. You tell a joke, right? They're not getting something. They're looking vacant, right? There's an interactive component to that. Because you're so removed in a MOOC, you have to plan for that interaction and build in good teaching pedagogy. And so it was great for me to learn to see that in real life and to get this trial by fire. But I think that advanced planning on how to interact and engage with the community of learners is really powerful. We as faculty know the content. That's what we spend our life doing, right? But the novel thing that we really have to focus on is how to develop that engagement.
Can I follow up just one last piece on that? A couple people mentioned it, but the value of a team in education, I don't think has fully been appreciated before. If you have a large company producing automobiles or computers or other items, you have a marketing team, you have an engineering design team, you have all these different teams, financial and so on. We don't think about education typically that way. The content expert has been the chief cook and bottle washer. But I think one of the things we're seeing in this course is the value of adding people from different expertises, you mentioned it, to produce an experience for the students that they can latch on to.
Question in the back, then we'll bring you. You, yes.
Okay, so a lot of the faculty I work with have been sort of wooed to try to get them to do a MOOC, but they're really apprehensive about the cost, not necessarily the dollar cost, but the investment they need to make in doing it. So what would you say to them? Was it worth the expense of putting this together? How would you encourage another faculty member to
The
do
expense
it, or
in
would you?
time, not in dollars.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, in our case, the whole course cost $57, and each of us invested 5 hours of time, so it wasn't that big of a deal. No, it was all-consuming, and I suspect yours was the same. All-consuming for all of us for a year. Was it worth it? It was transformative for all of us.
My life is absolutely changed. Mine, as an artist, as someone who now turns to engineering in ways in my craft to talk about the engineering of art. So I am utterly transformed.
Yeah, I would say that from our perspective, the team aspect of it was really powerful, and it brought a team of faculty members together. We really looked. I thought we were going to be dragging people kicking and screaming to these 1-hour sessions that we had every Monday, where we videotaped ourselves responding to questions. We did it once, and we were getting other faculty were asking to come in and join because they were exciting conversations, and we were engaging with each other. But we were engaging with the grad students. We were talking. It brought everyone together. We were talking to each other about this thing that we were all doing together. So that was great, and so a single faculty member doing it might not get the benefit of that, but bringing this together as a team or a center level product, I think that there's where you can really get the potential and the benefit. I was talking with Anthony Robinson, who did the MAPS MOOC, earlier this morning. He said that he's actually concerned that he's spent more time working on the MOOC since it's been done than he did while he was doing it, because there's so much interest. He said he's given 45 different presentations about the MOOC. So so hopefully that level of involvement and engagement will drop off as these things become more commonplace.
And I would like to, we're 5 minutes over, so we can continue this. If you want to, we could move it out to the lobby. But the message here is coming from these folks and from Anthony and others is that working on your teaching, whether it's through a MOOC or through something else, I know there are people in this audience who get that sense of community by developing themselves, and this is a very intense example of that. And I think we at the Schreier Institute have a responsibility to communicate that to you as potential incentive for doing one of these, where the return on investment may not be as obvious. So Any other burning questions before we adjourn and you trap them in the hall with your questions? Yes.
I do just have a really short question. My question is actually for Spencer over here. So Spencer, you're a graduate student. I'm curious to know what your reaction is to both engaging in the MOOC as well as how you see that potentially impacting your experience as a student moving forward through the educational system.
So going into like the days leading up to the MOOC, among the grad students involved, there was just a sort of a creeping sense of dread because we expected the forums to be a disaster, as anyone talking on the internet usually is. And we were all very pleasantly surprised at how well all the discussions on the forum went. Out of, you said we had 4,500 people actively involved on the forums. We had problems with like 2 or 3 of them. So, a little bit of faith in humanity restored there. And
Good start to a faculty career.
yeah, and it also was valuable to see, the extent of the engagement we were able to get, and just that there is a prospect of taking our work, outside of the strict ivory tower of academia and distributing it to a broader audience all around the world. Yeah.
All right, I'm sure the speakers would be happy to answer individual questions for you. There's another talk coming in. Oh, we don't have lunch.
As always.